Okay, first things first, we need to make sure we've got all the components for the card reader. So this is the transmitter box, this is the card reader itself that splits on the front of the machine, this is the antenna, and this is your connection cables. This one is probably the most important one because this is the splitter cable which connects to the MDB port on the board, and then you plug the coin mech into that splitter cable. Make sure everything's there so you've got what you need to install the card reader. You will also need a back plate, not necessarily to attach this to the machine, but more to use it as a guide, drill your holes to make sure you can screw the reader onto the machine itself. So before we drill the holes for the front of the machine, we need to come around the back and remove the metal plate. Using some tin snips. Once you've snipped the final piece off and you remove the metal plate, you've just got to be a little bit wary of any sharp bits that may be sticking out, so ideally either bend them over or snip them off with your snips. Then we put some masking tape on the panel so it's easy to mark the holes that you need to drill. So now you need to just get the back plate, place it on the machine where you're going to drill through the holes, and then mark each hole with a pen or pencil. You also need to consider the wire that connects through from the card reader to the transmitter box, so you need a larger hole in that kind of vicinity there. So now you just need to drill the holes by using a 5mm drill bit. At this point it's now good to put the plate back on to make sure that the holes that you've drilled are correct and aligned. Now we need to drill another hole big enough for the cable to go through in this vicinity here. So next we're going to drill a hole for the cable. In this instance we're using a 38mm 4-hole drill bit. Once you've got the holes drilled, you can feed the wire through, making sure that you don't snag the wire on anything sharp. And make sure then that everything lines up nicely, so your holes that you've drilled line up nicely with the screws. And then once you've done that, you can get your screws and you can fix the card reader to the panel. Screw all 4 of the screws in, nice and tight, but just be careful as you don't want to go too tight that it splits the panel. So now we come to the interesting bit of connecting everything together. So you take the wire from the card reader and connect it into the top of the transmitter box. Next then you disconnect the MDB coin mech from the board and you put it into the splitter cable. Once you've done that, then the other end of the splitter cable plugs back directly onto the board at J12. Now at the moment there's quite a lot of wire in there, so we do need to tidy that up at some point, because once you open and close the door it could potentially catch on the latch and potentially pull things out. But for now we're just going to perch that on the top there while we think about installing the antenna. Okay, so next thing to do is fit the external antenna, which looks something like this. The design may differ slightly, but the little cable there connects directly into the transmitter box, and then this needs to go out the exterior of the machine, normally around the back and either the top or the side. If you look inside the machine, behind the control panel, you can see 2 holes at the back. So if you cut 2 holes out the back of there, you can feed the antenna through. So once we've snipped that little hole out there, as you can see, we could try and get the cable through it by feeding it through the hole. And at this point, it always helps to have a second pair of hands in the front so they can reach through to the machine and grab it as you're feeding it through the back. Okay, once you've fed the wire through from the back to the front, you can bring it down to the transmitter box and you can connect it to the top of the box, just there. Just like that. Once you've plugged it in, you get the antenna and you can put it on either the back of the machine or on the top, depending on where the best reception is. Once you've done that, put the power key in the bottom of the machine to switch the power on. And straight away you can see we've got power going into the transmitter box. Various lights flashing, plus on the front of the machine you should see the reader. power up by itself. Now this could take anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes for it to download the latest data, in which time you'll have various messages on the front of the machine while it transmits and downloads the latest information. So just to recap, we've got the antenna, all the connections plugged in, the MDB connections plugged in. We've given this a few minutes to get its updates and register. So if you now look on the front of the machine, the card reader has now come up saying live, push go to start, gives a date and time. So this is now live and ready to go. So what we're going to do now is just sort out the wiring to make sure nothing's going to get snagged in the lock. So it's just a matter of putting it on the side using a cable tie and feeding the wires through the hole so they're out of the way. But of course, before we unplug anything, we need to make sure that the power is completely off to any of the components by unplugging the machine first before we remove any cables. Okay, so what we've done is we've tidied the cables up by feeding the two cables through the hole in the top, and we've connected them all the way along there so everything's out of the way. We've secured the transmitter box with a cable tie, and we've also cable tied together all the loose wiring down the bottom so that once we shut the door it won't snag on anything. Okay, now we've finished the installation, we can do a test bend. So press go to start, select an item, so I'm going to select 50. It will put £30 credit on the screen, but that is normal. I think that is the limit of what you can spend. But the card reader is asking you for £1.30, so you present your card, it reads the card, it authorises it, asks you to wait while it authorises it. Once it's approved, it will then vend the product out for you, and item as vended. And that's how you install a Vianet card reader. Thanks for watching, I hope this video has been helpful, and see you next time.